Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Philly Fan Radio. I'm your host, John Myer, along with Dan Palmieri. And today we're talking about, let's recap the last preseason game. Yes, I messed up. Oops, prediction was definitely off on that one. And then the initial and so far, the 53-man roster. First, Dan, let's talk about the preseason game against the Vikings. What was the final score? What, 23 something? 3 or?
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Pretty bad.
I messed up. I think mine was 17-14. I had the Eagles winning, but I understand it's the final and you're really kind of vetting out a lot of players. Most have already been decided on who you're going to have on the initial 53. I was wrong. I admit it. And it was an okay game to watch.
Yeah, it was a little rough because what it kind of emphasized was that we don't have much depth behind the first stringers. It's going to be a really interesting team. They didn't play a lot of second stringers either, but it really highlights the fact that we, and most teams, but we really need to keep our starters healthy, which kind of goes hand in hand with not playing in the preseason. But there's a lot of depth issues on this team, and mainly as we'll go through the 53, just some areas of concern that they might have.
Were there any surprises during this game that we didn't see? Anything that you were surprised about? I mean, I understand like the depth. I'm a big Tanner McKee fan, so seeing him out there was good. Anything that you saw that besides our death of a concern or surprise?
I mean, I'm a big fan of McKee too. I think that if Hurts, God forbid, does go down, that we need to bring in McKee rather than Picket, but I don't think the franchise feels that way. The running back for the fourth running back who basically didn't make the 53-man roster, he was an ex-49er. He looked pretty good, but he did have that early fumble. The lines were a little concerning to me. Offensive line was a little bit concerning to me. And I think it's too early to sound the drum on Nolan Smith. But I'm very concerned with him because he was supposed to be, playing at least 50% of the snaps. He was supposed to be one of our big star pass rushers this year. And he was struggling against third string tackles out there. So I'm really concerned about that.
Well, let's talk about the 53-man roster. Now, this is the initial one. The moment this came out on the 27th, obviously, we wrote it down. We have it right here. But there are a number of changes that happened and are still happening today. So we're going to go over the initial one and just some of the changes that happened. Dan, let's go through these group by group. And obviously, let's start with our QBs. No surprise, we've got Hurts, Pickett, and McKee. And I would label it as Hurts, McKee, Pickett. But however you want to do it, Hurts, number one.
No, definitely. That's pretty, that's the given. And I think judging by what I hear from fans and judging by what you hear in the press is I can't remember a year where there was more of a polarizing type of quarterback in our town. And what I mean by that is Hurts is either going to be really good, MVP level, or people think he's going to be really bad and we need to move on from him already. And the stress is out there. I mean, it's all on Hurts' shoulders. I mean, I can't think of another offensive unit that is more stacked than this unit that the Eagles have. And a lot is going to be riding on his shoulders. And he has the tools to do it. It's just a matter of whether or not he can deliver.
Do you think it was the same way when we had Carson Wentz? We were all on it. He was great, and then he had a bad season, and it's just Philadelphia in general where it's like, all right, move on. We need to go. Like, you can't have a bad year or two. You can have a bad year. You have a second one in a row. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely because the town craves for a Super Bowl. We got the one, and now we want more.
We got the taste of blood. We want the next one.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, franchise since 1933, and we only have one Super Bowl. NFL championships too. But yep. It was that way to a point with Wentz, but it was a little different only because it was an odd situation where they decided to stick with Wentz right after Nick Foles won the Super Bowl and became the MVP.
Yes.
So it was a weird situation, a little different there. But it just, I think Hurts' time to step up is now, and he's had a really good camp, and I could really see big things for this offense. Just a matter of staying healthy for sure.
I think he looked good in camp. I don't know. I just have this feeling that he won't be last year, the year before the Super Bowl run. It will be that year, right? We will look like that and more. We will dominate. But I'm going to move on to the running backs. Now, obviously, Saquon, Gainwell, and I am rooting for Will Shipley. That boy has put in his heart and soul into running, and every single time, he also changed his number to, I think, 28. I think there's this new number that he put on there. Actually, let me look that real quick while you're discussing some of the running backs.
Yeah, I mean, Saquon, obviously, that's going to be your workhorse. I don't think he'll be utilized quite like 300 carries like he was trying to get with the Giants, but
Yep.
he's going to be your workhorse, obviously. To be honest with you, I've never been that high on Kenny Gainwell. He's a good player, but a legit guy that you can count on should Saquon go down for maybe 15 carries a game. I don't think so, but I'm with you. Will Shipley, I mean, the guy plays hard. He is a good runner. He has good instincts. And one of the things that really caught me was that in preseason, you didn't see him like just going through the middle and just reckless out there. He was actually waiting for the blocks to establish. He was showing good patience, and that's something the veterans even have a hard time doing. So it was really good to see. I think he's going to be a good player. And again, not a 20 carry, 15 to 20 carry kind of guy, but with those two spelling Saquon, we're not going to demand as much from Saquon.
Yep, I'm rooting for Shipley. Now, Shipley did change it to 28, but he made the 53-man roster. So, seeing his name come up on the initial stuff was pretty cool. All right, wide receivers, 5 on the list. No surprise. AJ, Devontae. The others, obviously, Jahan Dotson from Washington. Covey on the list. Yep. Told you he was going to make that one. And then Johnny Love Wilson is on the list.
Johnny Love. I was a little surprised that they went so thin, to be honest with you, with only 5 wide receivers. It's a bit of a shock to me. I thought, it looked when we started camp like Paris Campbell was going to be a lock to make the 3rd wide receiver. And they said he was having a good camp, and then he got injured, and they went and signed Jahan Dotson, and he goes from most likely going to be your 3rd to not even making the roster. Now, they did sign him to the practice squad, but, that was quite a change. But I don't think there were any other real surprises. I mean, John Ross, he just didn't look the part.
Well, he also got injured in the second preseason game. He was out, the 3rd quarter, but
yeah, and the young guy Aeneas Smith, I believe, I might be wrong here, but I think he's from Texas Tech. He actually got injured too. There was questions whether or not he was going to even make the roster, but he got injured, so he was designated for IR. So that saves his spot, but he was injured.
Yeah, now we will talk about the practice squad, who made it, who's been moved around, but let's move on to the tight ends. We have our 2 tight ends, Calcaterra and Goddard. Now, there is a surprise tight end that joined the practice squad that got let go. We'll talk about who that is because they're not going with a 3 tight end set. What's your thoughts here on these tight ends? I mean, I don't know what more there is to say.
There's not too much to say, but I think it's to go with 2 tight ends at this point is fine, I guess. But I mean, Dallas Goedert's already found himself limited in practice due to an oblique injury. So do you really want to go that thin at tight end? It's most likely going to be one of those situations when we talk about the practice squad, we'll talk about it, but on game day, they're probably going to end up calling up another tight end.
Yep, I agree with you. All right, offensive line. We've got Becton, Dickerson. We got Fred Johnson, the other Johnson, Mr. Lane Johnson, Juergens, Keegan, Kinnard, Malata, and Steen. Any surprises there?
Mainly Fred Johnson. I didn't really see that one coming. They must like him a little bit better than what I saw in preseason. And they really don't have a true backup center, which is a little weird. And Brett Toth played that position. I thought he played it really well during the preseason. So that's a little different. I thought that Toth was definitely going to make the squad. I thought he was a lock to make the squad as a backup
Yep.
center. So it's that's a little surprising. They are a little thin there, but I again kind of like with the tight ends, I could see them making some call ups on game day for that one as well.
Yeah, I think they're going to change up things a little bit during the game day, given the situation or who they're going against.
Mm-hmm.
Tight ends. I'm a very I I like the one. Obviously, we'll talk about him. Jack Stoll, who was left, got let go of Washington. We picked him up. He's on the practice squad. There's a third 10. I think they're going to, depending on Goddard's condition before the game.
Yeah, most likely. You're absolutely right. It's all going to depend on the health. We all know that Goddard's had a little bit of trouble in the past staying healthy, so I'm sure that that's going to weigh heavily on their minds, and they'll make the educated guess, I guess you could say. But the specialists on this team really, you know, they've got a strong core, and the tight end will be a huge part of that. But at the same time, if they're forced to go 4 wide receiver rather than go to three wide receiver and 2 tight end, then I think they're more than capable of doing that.
Oh yeah, I like their offensive weapons. And speaking of that, let's move over to the defense. We've got Booker, Carter, Davis. Now Jalen and Jordan, Carter, Davis. I'm hoping they, this year is their year. Uh, Moro Ojamama. Yeah, I'm gonna butcher your name. Sorry. And Tuba, and Milton Williams. And by the way, I apologize if I butcher your name, but I suck at it any which way. Dan.
Yeah, defensive line. I mean, the surprise to me was Thomas Booker, mainly because you don't really know too much about him. He had a good third preseason game there. He looked pretty good, but that was a bit of a surprise. But other than that, I mean, pretty standard. And to be honest with you, Milton Williams is a defensive tackle that I loved last year. I think he's
Yep.
got a high motor. Um, in a lot of situations, I think that he's actually better than Jordan Davis, mainly because Davis always looks out of shape come middle of the year. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
But I like Milton Williams a lot, and I think he's a starting caliber defensive tackle in this league for sure.
I agree. Now we got our edge rushers. Yes, Mr. BG himself. Last season that he'll be playing. We've got Huff, and I see Huff on there. We got Hunt, Patrick Johnson, Nolan Smith. Seems to be your favorite,
Oh yeah,
and Josh Sweat.
yeah. Brandon Graham, Given, Bryce Huff is their big free agent signing. We didn't really get to see him too much in preseason, so it's hard to make an assumption on how he's going to play. He does have all the tools, but it's going to be a guess. I mean, the days of us having a deep and loaded pass rushing core are kind of gone this year. We have good players, but there's so many unknowns. I mean,
Yep.
who's going to step up and take Reddick's spot there? And one guy that they were counting on, as you said, Nolan Smith, I just don't see it. I really don't. He looks undersized, and he's being swallowed up by, tackles out there. If he's supposed to come in on rushing downs, that's fine. But he was also having issues, what it looked like, rushing the passer. So he's going to be, to me, he's going to be a liability, and I don't think you're going to see that much. I think you're actually going to supplement him with Jalix Hunt, because I think Jalix Hunt reminds me a little bit of Javon Curse out there. Really raw athlete, but good hands and can really get there fast.
Well, Nolan Smith that we talked about for the first preseason game, definitely on the bull rush, he was great. He could get home on it. I'm not sure on some of the other stuff, but I think it really depends on the game that we have to see them in live in action, right?
Right.
Where preseason's a little bit more of a slow motion, right? Players are kind of taking it easy. Some are really going die hard, but in the aspect of it, I think we can make a decision after at least the second game. We can say yay or nay, and if he's going to be improving. And obviously, the first one is happening on September 6th, Friday night at 8:15. Yes, in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And yes, this will be very interesting. All right, Dan, let's move over to our linebackers. Zach Ball, Nakobe Dean. Yes. Trotter Jr. I'm looking forward to seeing him live on the field. Van Summerum and Devin White.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really out of the norm here. I think it's just going to be interesting to see how they're deployed and what the starters are going to look like. Everybody assumes that it's going to be Devin White and Zach Bond, but Nakobe Dean really came on at the end of preseason. He had a good camp. Yep. He was even praised by the defensive coordinator, so he's good. Jeremiah Trotter is still raw, but he looked really good. He had good instincts out there. And I think Ben Van Sumeren, I think that's a special teams type of guy.
Jeremiah Trotter Sr. was on one of the podcasts or radio shows, and he was talking about his son and how he feels out there. And he said his son is built for today's play, meaning he's not the same as his dad. He's built for the game as it is today. He's leaner, but still aggressive. You remember Trotter out there, big guy, but full muscle that would plow you through. And I think Trotter Jr., which to his credit, and he's leaner, but still as fast or faster than his dad onto the field, which is going to play a significant role.
No, absolutely. Very instinctful out there. Definitely.
Yep. All right, let's talk about the defensive backs. We have, yes, Reed Blankenship, James Bradbury, we'll talk more about him, Cooper DeJean, CJ Gardner Johnson, who came back, obviously, Avonte Maddox, McCollum, Mitchell, Quinron Mitchell, yep, Eli Ricks, Ringo Rogers, and Mr. Darius Slay.
Yeah, so your starters pretty much look like they're going to be Darius Slay and Isaiah Rogers. Actually, it's going to be interesting with that one because Isaiah Rogers is actually mixing in right now with Quinyon Mitchell in base packages. So what that is you got Darius Slay. Forget about him. He's your one cornerback. The other cornerback in a base package where there's only two set corners, a lot of people are saying that Quinyon Mitchell might be in that package. And then once they go to nickel, which is a pretty good amount of the time, Mitchell's actually going to move inside and Isaiah Rogers is going to go to the outside. So that'll be interesting to see. Either way, the rookie has been very impressive, Quinyon Mitchell. Coming out of the MAC, everybody was worried. A lot of people were worried about him not transitioning. I know I was one of them, not transitioning as quick. But he seems to grasp it. He seems like a smart kid. Very instinctual there, too. The safeties, nothing really shocking here. I am not a big fan of Reed Blankenship. I made it known that I'm not a big fan of his. I think that he's a liability out there in pass coverage, and he just doesn't have good instincts as to where the ball carrier is when it's, coming down trying to hit somebody. But he's going to be your other starting safety. Man, usually Vic Fangio likes to work in a 3-safety look sometimes. And basically, because of the Bradbury injury here, I think you're going to see Avonte Maddox mix in there a lot as your third safety, which I'm fine with because Maddox is a good player. I actually liked him at safety better than I did at corner the one year that he played safety. So I like him out there for sure.
We'll talk about a little bit more about the injuries and the changes to the roster in a few moments. But our specialists, well, Mr. Jake Elliott, Rick Lovato, and Braden Mann, I don't really have much more to say for them. I mean, Jake Elliott, he's a shoo-in. I mean, yeah, he had a little issues in the first preseason game of going, but he can get the rust off, right? And then let's go into this. And I think he's going to have an awesome year. I think he's going to surpass his 61-yarder.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if he could surpass it. He has the leg for it, for sure. But, yeah, I think he's going to be solid. Braden Mann,
this was what, 67? I think 67 by, but I think it was indoor, wasn't it?
66 or 67.
Yeah, right around. But anyway, I think,
yeah.
Well, hell, if he gets 62 and closes out a game like he did against the Giants, who cares?
Yeah, or in the driving rainstorm, kicking that one against the Bills. So
yep,
he's a solid kicker. You can't complain about him. He is this generation's equivalent of David Akers for this team, for sure.
Ah, I like that. Oh, yeah, Mr. Akers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, practice squad. Now I'm going to read what it was at the initial 53-man roster announcement, and some of these have changed, which we'll talk about in a second. We have Oren Burks. There's your Paris Campbell. All right, he's on the practice squad. All right, Tyron Davis-Price. We got Nick Gates, Will Greer. So we got a QB on the practice squad. Wasn't a fan, to be honest with you. He had one series. That's all he got. So I don't really have much more. Gabe Hall, EJ Jenkins. We've got McMahon, Rosemary, Jack Saint, Andre Sam, Brandon Smith, Caden Stearns, Mr. Jack Stoll, we talked about, and Lakeen Bakalaha, if I pronounce it right. But anyway, those were your practice squads. Yeah. Now they can have up to 16, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we got 2, 4, 6, 7, we have 14 on it. And I know they saved some room to grab some of them off of waivers and what's happening around the league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The person I wanted to highlight here is Nick Gates. Nick Gates actually only came to the practice squad because he was told by Philly that he would be a call-up on week 1. So I think that's going to be he is a center. He played center for the Giants. I think that's going to be your week 1 call-up to be the backup to Cam Jurgens, should there be, any reason that he goes down. So Nick Gates, I mean, he played for us in preseason. Can't say anything bad about him. Can't say anything good about him.
Not yet. I guess it's too early to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess if you don't call the guy's name and on the offensive line, then that's a good thing. So.
The only center we should be calling out is Kelsey on the. All right. Yeah. Let's talk about, we talked about Stoll, nice to have Stoll back. He was all right. I'm not saying he was the greatest. He caught some. He might have been attempted maybe once or twice a game, or at least he was out there. So we know Stoll's back, but you mentioned James Bradbury going on IR, leg injury, 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Whether or not he made the team was a question to me. He did end up making the roster, and then he got injured. I think that there was probably financial ramifications of him not making the squad and them cutting him, which is why I think he made the team. And to be honest with you, he's a good guy. He seems like he is a good player, but I'm really not saddened that he's injured in terms of, I don't think it'll have a big impact on this roster.
Well, the other moves that happened after this came out, Oren Burks was actually moved from the practice squad to the roster, and then Brett Toth was signed to the practice squad. So, yeah. Some different changes. What do you feel on that?
I like Brett Toth. I do.
Yep.
He's a good player. He has the potential to be a really good player. I mean, I'm not talking about a starter here, but a guy that we don't have to worry that much about if somebody on the offensive line goes down. He was actually a guy in preseason who played center. He played guard. He was actually the starting guard when Dickerson was down with the injury in the first game. So, and he also has experience playing tackle. So anybody that can swing around there, it's a good person to have. And Oren Burks, that was a little surprising to me because it's another linebacker type, and I think they're really loaded on that. I don't know if it's indicative of anything really. I would really be surprised if he's actually made active on game day, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll definitely see about that. And the other moves that happen, and there's so many that's going on, and we'll try to bring you some of the updates. Defensive tackle Byron Young, Raiders, was signed to the 53-man roster. And Marlon Tutupo, I can't do it. So, who is a defensive lineman, was released. There's some other changes. See how quickly things change?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, Byron Young, I personally don't know him. I haven't seen him play. Former third-round pick, but he's a third-round pick from, I think, 2022. And if they're really willing to move on from him that quickly, it raises some questions.
Yep.
But our defensive tackle group, I mean, you got Carter, you got Davis, you got Milton Williams. I think Ojomo played really well. He's not going to be asked to really come in and do anything. He might be one of those inactive on game day. Even if he is active, I don't think he's going to see the field that much. So it's, low risk, low reward type of deal for me.
And the other thing that I just came up with, and this is why I follow so many people on there for the Eagles, signing 6th round pick Dylan McMahon to the practice squad. Did we announce his name? No. Yeah, he's up there. He's a guard / center on it. So we do have the latest information on it. I don't have any information on him and where he's at and performing, but like I said, a lot of the practice squad, either you were performing great in it, you have to sign to the practice squad. Obviously, a lot of them like to secure this, so they're like, hey, bring you on and nobody can take you away from us, which allows you to be elevated for game day and move around. It's basically reserved for the team.
Yeah, pretty much. The practice squad, we had a lot of call-ups last year. It shouldn't be anybody that you really need on a regular basis unless something went horribly wrong on your team. But yeah, it's rounding out the form. The starters are pretty much entrenched here. There are some little openings here, like linebacker, the edge rushers. Who's really going to start there? It's going to be a rotation type of thing, but pretty much the team is set to go. They're set to go in Brazil, and it's going to be very, very interesting. Not just the atmosphere in Brazil, but the fact that they're taking a home game away from them. And immediately, I mean, if we had any questions about the team, it might just be answered in week 1 because they're playing a team that actually is favored to be around their division, with the Lions, be a perennial playoff contender, and Jordan Love is lit the world on fire at the end of last year, so everybody's in love with him. But
love the pun. Everybody's in love with him, and he also got that big contract. So
yeah, no kidding. And so it'll be a great game to see. It'll be really good to gauge how powerful their offense is going to be. I mean, everybody loves the defense. I want to see the defense. I love the defensive performances out there, but this team is really offensively heavy, and that's where they invest their time and money in. So it'll be good to see whether or not their investments pay off for sure.
Dan, before I wrap it up, this will be our recording and it'll go out before week 1 game. What's your prediction?
I knew it was coming too.
You should have prepared this one. I didn't prepare either.
I actually think it's going to be 31-24 Eagles. I do. I really think
14. 35-14 for me. Wait.
Whoa.
Yes.
You're going with a blowout week 1?
35-14 me. You got 31-20. Yes, I am. And
damn.
Here's why. All right. First of all, the team is lit. They're having so much fun, and a preseason on the practices. They're just fired up. I think I would love it if Kelsey came out there and did a freaking speech. Hungry dogs run faster. I don't know. I just think they're going to light it up and just do it. And even though they're not at home, and technically it should be a home game, but I don't know. I just have this feeling that they're going to run away with it. And before you comment, or I just did a prediction with a buddy on a previous podcast that happened before this, is we predicted what the Eagles were going to do, and he predicted what the Raiders are going to do. And my top end prediction is they're going all the way, 17-0. Okay. So wait. My low end prediction is 15-2 because they're going so well that they're going to throw away the last 2 games because they don't need them. That's where I'm at.
You are a true Eagles fan, sir. You might not be realistic, but you are an Eagles fan for sure.
I try.
I don't foresee a 17-0 season, but truth be told, I did bet the line on FanDuel, giving them a little shout out. Bet on FanDuel to
Hey, if you're not a subscriber to FanDuel, by the way, if you want to sponsor us, FanDuel, please click the link in the description below. Anyway, go ahead.
I did bet the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl. They had good odds. So I bet the Eagles to win the Super Bowl, and I did bet Jalen Hurts to win the MVP. So if those things happen, our last podcast before the season is officially wrapped up, I will have some cash, and I'll be throwing the cash.
Okay, so what's the line right now for the? Let's go.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Hold on. FanDuel.
I mean, I'm not that much financially inclined to put that much down. But
I don't even know any of this.
I think I put 200 down.
You can put 200. All right, let's see. To win the next game, 152 to win the division, 140 to win the Super Bowl, plus 1,300.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I'd be cashing out at 2,600. So, not bad. Not a bad deal.
If they win the game.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you heard it here. And if you do not win any money based off of Dan's recommendations, he is not liable for it. He is not a financial advisor or a sportsbook betting pro.
Yeah. Dan's home address in the link below.
Yeah. But please see your local representative. All right, everybody. We got to wrap up this podcast. Thanks so much, Dan, for doing this with me, man.
Thank you very much. And let's go Birds.
All right, everybody, this has been the Philly Fan Radio. I'm your host along with Dan Palmieri. We're wrapping things up. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe, and notify because guess what? Dan, close us out.
Thanks, everybody, and let's go Birds.
We're out of here.